The autumn wind howled across the Kansas plains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of dying grass and distant rain. In the isolated cabin 3 miles west of Dodge City, 12-year-old Ellie Martin pressed her face against the cold window glass, watching the darkness swallow the horizon. Her adoptive mother, Sarah Martin, hummed softly while mending clothes by the firelight, unaware that this peaceful evening would be their last. "Hi, how are you? Sorry to interrupt your story, but what I'm going to ask you is really quick, and it will really help the channel to grow and create new stories. Just click below the video image to subscribe. You'll be doing an act of kindness and encouragement to those who are just starting out. Thank you very much, and continue with your story." "Mama, do you think Papa Cole will ever come back?" Ellie asked, her breath fogging the window. Sarah's needle paused mid-stitch. The question hung in the air like smoke from their chimney. "Your father, he's a complicated man, child. Sometimes people need to find themselves before they can find their way home." Ellie had been only 4 when Cole Hawk Barrett left. She remembered fragments, calloused hands lifting her onto a horse, the smell of leather and tobacco, eyes the color of storm clouds that seemed to see everything and nothing at once. Sarah had taken her in when Cole disappeared into the vast wilderness, becoming the mother Ellie had never known. "But why did he leave us?" Ellie's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah set down her sewing and moved to the window, placing a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Your father carries ghosts, sweetheart. Sometimes a man's past weighs so heavy that he thinks he's protecting the people he loves by staying away." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Neither of them noticed the shadows moving beyond the tree line or the glint of metal in the moonlight. Thomas Martin, Sarah's husband and the only father Ellie truly remembered, burst through the door with an armload of firewood. His face was flushed from the cold, but his eyes held an urgency that made both women turn. "We need to douse the lights," he said quietly, setting the wood down with deliberate care. "Now." "Thomas, what's wrong?" Sarah's voice carried the tension of a woman who had lived through enough hardship to recognize danger. "Riders. At least 6 of them, moving slow and deliberate. They've been watching the cabin for the past hour." Thomas moved to the gun rack, his weathered hands steady as he checked his rifle. "Take Ellie to the root cellar. Don't come out until I give the all clear." But it was too late. The first shot shattered the front window, sending glass cascading across the wooden floor like deadly rain. Sarah screamed, pulling Ellie down as Thomas dove behind the overturned table. The sound of hoofbeats thundered around the cabin like approaching thunder. "Thomas Martin!" a voice called from outside, rough and commanding. "We know you're in there. Come out peaceful-like, and maybe we'll make this quick." Thomas looked at Sarah, his eyes conveying everything words couldn't. 20 years of marriage, of building a life together in this harsh land, of taking in a lost child and giving her love, all of it balanced on the edge of a knife. "What do you want?" Thomas called back, his rifle trained on the broken window. "You know what we want, Martin. The deed to the Riverside property. Your brother-in-law should have paid his debts before he died." Ellie's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't understand the words, but she understood fear. It filled the cabin like smoke, thick and choking. "I don't have any deed," Thomas shouted. "Henry never gave me anything before he passed." A different voice answered, colder and more menacing. "Then I reckon we'll have to search for it ourselves. Boys, light 'em up." The first torch came through the broken window, landing on Sarah's sewing basket. The dry fabric ignited instantly, flames licking hungrily at the wooden walls. Another torch followed, then another. Within seconds, the cabin was filling with smoke and orange light. "The cellar!" Thomas yelled, firing shots through the window. "Get to the cellar!" Sarah grabbed Ellie's hand, pulling her toward the trapdoor hidden beneath the kitchen rug. But as they ran, a bullet caught Thomas in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled but kept firing, buying them precious seconds. "Go!" he gasped. "Take care of her, Sarah. Tell her that her real father was a good man, no matter what anyone says." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her hands remained steady as she lifted the trapdoor. "Come on, baby girl. We have to go down." Ellie looked back at Thomas. This man who had been her father in every way that mattered, as he reloaded his rifle with blood streaming down his arm. "Papa Thomas!" "I'll be right behind you," he lied, and they all knew it. The cellar was dark and cold, carved from the hard Kansas earth. Sarah pulled Ellie into the furthest corner, behind barrels of preserved food and sacks of grain. Above them, the gunfire continued, punctuated by the crackling of flames and the sound of men's voices. "Where's the deed, old man?" "I told you I don't have it." More gunshots, a heavy thud, then silence. Ellie pressed her face against Sarah's shoulder, trying to block out the sounds, but she couldn't escape the smell of smoke growing stronger or the heat beginning to seep through the floorboards above. "Listen to me, Ellie," Sarah whispered urgently. "No matter what happens, you stay hidden. Do you understand? You stay hidden until they're gone." "What about you, Mama?" Sarah's hand trembled as she stroked Ellie's hair. "I need to help Papa Thomas. But you're going to be brave for me, aren't you?" Before Ellie could answer, Sarah was moving toward the cellar stairs. "Mama, no. I love you, sweet girl. Remember that. And remember, your father, your real father, he's out there somewhere. If anything happens to us, you find him. Cole Barrett, promise me." "I promise," Ellie whispered, though she didn't understand why. Sarah climbed the stairs and pushed open the trap door. Smoke poured down like a waterfall, and with it came the sound of men ransacking the cabin above. "Well, well, look what we got here. Please." Sarah's voice was steady despite the fear. "The child is already dead. The smoke got her. Just take what you want and go." "Where's the deed, lady?" "There is no deed. Henry gambled everything away before he died. There's nothing left." A harsh laugh. "Then I guess you folks died for nothing." The gunshot echoed through the cellar like thunder. Ellie bit her hand to keep from screaming as she heard Sarah's body hit the floor above. For what felt like hours, the men searched the burning cabin. Ellie could hear them moving furniture, breaking things, cursing when they found nothing of value. The smoke grew thicker, the heat more intense. She pressed herself deeper into the corner, behind the grain sacks, as tears streamed down her soot-covered face. Finally, the voices moved outside. "Burn it all," the cold voice commanded. "Make sure there's nothing left." "What about the deed? If it was here, it's ash now. We'll deal with the property another way." The sound of horses fading into the distance was almost lost beneath the roar of flames consuming the cabin above. Ellie waited, counting her heartbeats, until she was sure they were gone. Then she waited longer, until the heat became unbearable and smoke filled the cellar like a living thing. When she finally pushed open the trap door, the cabin was an inferno. She could see Thomas's body near the window, Sarah's near the kitchen. The sight burned itself into her memory more surely than any flame. Ellie crawled through the smoke and fire, her clothes singed, her lungs burning. She made it to the door just as a burning beam crashed down where she had been standing. Outside, she collapsed in the dirt, gasping clean air and watching everything she had ever known turn to ash and ember. As dawn broke over the Kansas plains, painting the sky the color of blood and gold, Ellie Martin sat alone in the ruins of her life. The wind had died down, leaving only the whisper of settling ash and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. She thought of Sarah's last words. Find him. Cole Barrett. Somewhere out there, beyond the endless horizon, was a man who didn't know that his daughter needed him. A man who had run from his past, but would soon find that the past had a way of catching up. Ellie pulled her singed shawl tighter around her shoulders and began walking toward Dodge City. Behind her, smoke still rose from the ruins. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the slim hope that the fearless cowboy might still have room in his heart for the child he had left behind. The hunt was about to begin. 3 days after the fire, Cole "Hawk" Barrett rode into Dodge City like a specter from another time. His horse, a steel-gray stallion named Thunder, moved with the quiet precision of an animal that had learned to trust only one man. Cole himself sat the saddle with the easy grace of someone born to it, but his eyes, Those storm-gray eyes that had once been the last thing many men saw held a weariness that spoke of too many miles and too many regrets. The town had changed in the 8 years since he'd left. New buildings lined Front Street, the railroad had brought prosperity, and the wild edge that had once defined Dodge City had been dulled by civilization. But Cole could still smell the familiar mixture of dust, cattle, and human ambition that had always characterized this place where the frontier met the world. He guided Thunder toward the Long Branch Saloon, knowing that information flowed there like whiskey, freely and often mixed with lies. As he dismounted, several passers-by stopped to stare. Some recognized the weathered face beneath the black hat. Others simply sensed the danger that moved with him like a second shadow. "Well, I'll be hornswoggled," came a voice from the saloon's batwing doors. "Cole Barrett, as I live and breathe." Ruby Malone stepped onto the wooden sidewalk, her red hair catching the afternoon sun. She had aged gracefully in the years since Cole had seen her, the laugh lines around her green eyes speaking of a woman who had found reasons to smile despite the hardships of frontier life. She owned the Long Branch now, having bought it from the previous owner with money saved from years of careful planning and harder work. "Ruby," Cole touched the brim of his hat, his voice carrying the gravel of a man who spoke little and meant every word. "You're looking well. And you're looking like a man who's been riding hard with trouble on his tail." She studied his face with the practiced eye of someone who had seen every kind of man the West could produce. "What brings the famous Hawk Barrett back to Dodge?" "Looking for information about a fire. The Martin place, 3 nights ago." Ruby's expression sobered immediately. "Thomas and Sarah Martin, good people. Heard they died in the fire, along with their little girl." She paused, watching Cole's reaction carefully. "You knew them?" Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The girl, Ellie, she is my daughter." The words hung between them like a confession. Ruby had known Cole before he'd become the fearless cowboy, back when he was just another young man trying to make his way in a hard world. She had also known about the child he'd left behind, though they had never spoken of it directly. "Cole, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were—" "Where are the bodies?" Ruby gestured toward the end of the street. "Doc Holliday's got them at his place." "But Cole, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, you should know that Sheriff Dunn has already closed the investigation, called it an accident. Faulty chimney," he said. "Dunn," Cole's voice carried a weight of old animosity. "Wade Dunn is still wearing a badge? Sheriff for 3 years now. And before you ask, yes, he's still the same snake he always was, just with legal authority now." Cole had history with Wade Dunn that went back to before either of them had gray in their hair. Dunn had been a cattle rustler and small-time criminal who had somehow managed to reinvent himself as a lawman when Dodge City needed someone willing to look the other way for the right price. "I need to see the bodies," Cole said. "Doc's place is 2 blocks down." "But Cole—" Ruby placed a hand on his arm, feeling the tension coiled there like a spring. "Be careful. Whatever happened out there, it wasn't an accident. And if you start asking questions, you're going to find yourself in the middle of something bigger than you might be ready for." Cole looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. "I've been ready for 8 years. I just didn't know it." Doc Holliday's office occupied the ground floor of a 2-story building that served as both medical practice and makeshift morgue. The doctor himself was a thin, consumptive man, whose hands shook slightly but whose eyes remained sharp as a surgeon's blade. "Mr. Barrett," Doc Holliday said without looking up from his ledger, "I wondered when you might turn up. You knew I was coming? Word travels fast in a small town. Man like you doesn't ride into Dodge without people taking notice." The doctor finally looked up, his gaze taking in Cole's weathered face and the guns at his hip. "I suppose you want to see them. Just the girl." Doc Holliday led him to a back room where 3 bodies lay covered by white sheets. He pulled back the sheet from the smallest form, revealing a child who looked peaceful in death, her face unmarked by the violence that had claimed her. But it wasn't Ellie. Cole stared at the unfamiliar face, his mind racing. "This isn't her." "What do you mean?" "This isn't my daughter. Ellie Martin has a scar on her left temple, from a fall when she was 6. This girl, he looked closer. This girl is younger, maybe 10 years old. Doc Holliday frowned, consulting his notes. The bodies were badly burned when they brought them in. Identification was difficult, but Sheriff Dunn was certain. Sheriff Dunn was wrong. Cole's voice carried a dangerous edge. Where did they find this child? In the ruins of the cabin, same as the others. Cole studied the girl's face, committing it to memory. Someone's daughter had died in that fire, but it wasn't his. Which meant Ellie was still alive, somewhere in the wind-swept vastness of Kansas. Doc, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone I was here, and don't tell anyone what I just told you about this girl. Why? Because if Sheriff Dunn thinks my daughter is dead, it might be the only thing keeping her alive. Cole left the doctor's office with more questions than answers, but also with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Ellie was alive. She had to be. And if she was alive, she was in danger. He made his way back to the Long Branch, where Ruby was serving drinks to a handful of afternoon customers. She caught his eye and nodded toward a back room, following him there once she had handed off the bar to her assistant. Well? She asked, closing the door behind them. She's alive. Ellie's alive. Ruby's eyes widened. How do you know? Cole explained about the body, about the misidentification. Ruby listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled with each word. If she's alive, where is she? Ruby asked. That's what I intend to find out. But first, I need to know what really happened at that cabin, and I need to know why Sheriff Dunn was so quick to close the investigation. Ruby moved to a small safe hidden behind a painting, withdrawing a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. She poured drinks for both of them, her movements deliberate and thoughtful. There's been talk, she said finally, about the Martin place, about the land it sits on. What kind of talk? The kind that gets people killed. There's a man named Jed Crowley, calls himself Black Dog. He's been buying up land along the Arkansas River, sometimes through legal means, sometimes through other methods. Cole accepted the whiskey, but didn't drink. And the Martin place sits right in the middle of what he wants. But Thomas Martin wouldn't sell. Said the land had been in his wife's family, that it meant something to them. So Crowley decided to take it another way. That's the theory. But proving it, Ruby shrugged. Crowley's got Sheriff Dunn in his pocket, along with half the town council. He's building something out there, Cole. Something big. And he doesn't want witnesses. Cole finally took a sip of the whiskey, feeling it burn away the dust of 3 days' hard riding. Where would a 12-year-old girl go if she was scared and alone? Depends on the girl. But if she's anything like her father, Ruby smiled grimly. She'd go to ground, find somewhere safe to hide while she figured out her next move. The old mine shaft, Cole said suddenly, about 2 miles east of the Martin place. Ellie and I used to explore there when she was little. She always said it felt like a secret fort. Ruby nodded. It's worth checking. But Cole, if Crowley's men are still looking for her, then I better find her first. Cole stood to leave, but Ruby caught his arm again. There's something else you should know. About why you really left 8 years ago. Cole's expression hardened. Ruby, don't. That business with the Jameson gang. The reason you thought you had to leave Dodge, leave Ellie. She met his eyes steadily. It wasn't your fault. The information that got those people killed, it didn't come from you. How do you know? Because it came from Wade Dunn. He was feeding information to both sides, playing them against each other. You were just convenient to blame when it all went sideways. The words hit Cole like a physical blow. 8 years of exile, 8 years of believing he was too dangerous to be around the people he loved, and it had all been based on a lie. Why didn't you tell me before? Because you were already gone, and I thought maybe it was better that way. Maybe Ellie was safer without the fearless cowboy's reputation hanging over her. Ruby's voice was soft with regret. I was wrong. Cole set down his glass and headed for the door. I'm going to find my daughter, and when I do, I'm going to make sure the men who took her family away from her pay for what they've done. And done? Cole paused at the door, his hand on the handle. Dunn's been wearing a badge he doesn't deserve for too long. Time someone reminded him what justice really looks like. As Cole stepped back into the afternoon sun, Thunder nickered softly, sensing his master's change in mood. The horse had carried Cole through 8 years of wandering, but now they had a purpose again. Somewhere out there, a frightened girl was hiding in the shadows, waiting for rescue. And somewhere else, the men who had destroyed her world were planning their next move. The fearless cowboy was back, and this time, he wasn't running from anything. The abandoned silver mine east of Dodge City had been carved into the hillside during the early days of the territory, when men still believed they could scratch fortune from the Kansas earth. Now it served as a tomb for broken dreams and rusted equipment, its entrance partially hidden by scrub brush and the passage of time. Cole approached on foot, having left Thunder tied to a cottonwood tree half a mile back. His boots made no sound on the rocky ground, a skill learned during years of hunting men who would kill him if they heard him coming. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the prairie, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. As he neared the mine entrance, Cole saw the signs he'd been hoping for: disturbed earth around the opening, small footprints in the dust, and most telling of all, a piece of blue fabric caught on a thorny bush. The same blue as the dress Ellie had been wearing in the photograph Sarah Martin had sent him 2 years ago, the only communication he'd received from his daughter's life since leaving. "Ellie," he called softly, his voice carrying just far enough to reach the mine's depths, without alerting anyone who might be watching from a distance. "Ellie, it's Cole. It's your father." The silence that followed was broken only by the wind whistling through the mine shaft. Cole waited, counting heartbeats, before trying again. "I know you're scared, sweetheart. I know you don't know if you can trust me. But Sarah, your mama Sarah told you to find me, didn't she?" This time, the silence was different, expectant. "I'm going to come in now. I'm not armed. Well, I am, but I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to take you somewhere safe." Cole entered the mine slowly, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. The shaft extended about 50 feet into the hillside before opening into a larger chamber where miners had once followed a vein of silver that had played out decades ago. As his vision cleared, he saw her. Ellie Martin, his daughter, sat pressed against the far wall of the chamber, her knees drawn up to her chest, her blue dress torn and stained with soot and dirt. Her dark hair, so much like her mother's, hung in tangles around a face that was far too thin and marked by 3 days of fear and hunger. But her eyes, those were Cole's eyes, gray as storm clouds and filled with a wariness that no 12-year-old should possess. "Hello, Ellie," Cole said, stopping about 10 feet away and slowly lowering himself to sit cross-legged on the mine floor. "You've grown up quite a bit since I last saw you." Ellie stared at him without speaking, her gaze taking in every detail of his appearance. Cole let her look, understanding that she was trying to reconcile the man before her with whatever memories she had of the father who had left when she was 4. "You look like the picture Mama Sarah showed me," she said finally, her voice hoarse from smoke and crying. "But older. 8 years will do that to a man." Cole kept his voice gentle, the way he might speak to a spooked horse. "Are you hurt?" Ellie shook her head, then seemed to reconsider. "My hands are burned a little. From the fire. May I see?" After a moment's hesitation, Ellie extended her hands. Cole moved closer, carefully examining the minor burns on her palms and fingers. They were painful, but not serious. The kind of injuries that would heal with proper care. "We'll get these cleaned up," he said. "But first I need to know what happened at the cabin. Can you tell me?" The question brought tears to Ellie's eyes, but she wiped them away with the back of her hand in a gesture that reminded Cole painfully of himself. "Bad men came. They wanted something from Papa Thomas, some kind of paper. When he said he didn't have it, Her voice broke. "They killed him and Mama Sarah," Cole finished gently. Ellie nodded, unable to speak. "How did you get away?" "Mama Sarah hid me in the root cellar. She told me to stay hidden no matter what. After they left, I waited until the fire got too hot, then I ran." "You did exactly right," Cole said. "Your mama was very smart, and you were very brave." "They think I'm dead," Ellie said suddenly. "I heard them talking before they left. They said everyone was dead." Cole nodded grimly. That might be the only thing keeping you safe right now. The men who did this, they're still looking for whatever they think your papa had. If they knew you were alive, what did they want? Papa Thomas said he didn't have any paper. Cole was quiet for a moment, weighing how much truth a 12-year-old could handle. Sometimes men want things that don't belong to them. Land, money, power, and sometimes they're willing to hurt innocent people to get those things. Like Mama and Papa Thomas. Yes. Ellie was quiet for a long moment, processing this. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. Mama Sarah said you were a good man even if you had to go away. She said you'd come back if I really needed you. The words hit Cole harder than any bullet ever had. She was right. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere until you're safe. Where will we go? It was a good question, and one Cole had been wrestling with since leaving Doc Holliday's office. Dodge City wasn't safe, not with Sheriff Dunn in Crowley's pocket, but they couldn't run forever either. Eventually, they would have to face the men who had destroyed Ellie's world. First, we're going to get you cleaned up and fed. Then we're going to find out exactly who killed your family and why. And then, Cole's voice carried the cold promise of a man who had spent years learning how to deliver justice in a lawless land. Then we're going to make sure they can never hurt anyone else. Ellie studied his face in the dim light of the mine. You're going to kill them. It wasn't a question, and Cole didn't insult her intelligence by denying it. If that's what it takes to keep you safe, yes. Good, Ellie said with a fierceness that surprised them both. They deserve to die for what they did. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air of the mine. His daughter had been forced to grow up in 3 days, and the innocence in her eyes had been replaced by something harder. He recognized it because he had seen it in his own reflection years ago, the moment when a person realizes that the world is not fair, that evil exists, and that sometimes violence is the only answer. Come on, he said, standing and extending his hand. Let's get out of here. Ellie took his hand, her small fingers gripping his with surprising strength. As they made their way toward the mine entrance, Cole's mind was already working through the challenges ahead. They needed supplies, information, and allies. Most importantly, they needed to stay ahead of Crowley's men while gathering enough evidence to expose the truth. As they emerged into the fading daylight, Cole heard the sound that made his blood run cold. Horses approaching at a gallop. He pulled Ellie behind a boulder just as 6 riders crested the ridge above them, their faces hard and their hands resting on their weapons. "Spread out," called the lead rider, a man with a black beard and cruel eyes. "Check every hiding place. The girl's got to be around here somewhere." Cole recognized the voice from Ruby's description. Jed, Black Dog Crowley himself, the man who had ordered the deaths of Thomas and Sarah Martin. And now he was hunting Ellie with the persistence of a predator who knew his prey was wounded. "Stay low," Cole whispered to Ellie. "No matter what happens, don't move until I tell you." Cole drew his Colt .45 with the smooth motion of a man who had done it 1,000 times before. The weight of the gun in his hand was familiar, comforting in the way that only a trusted tool could be. He had hoped to avoid violence with Ellie watching, but Crowley had made that choice for him. The riders were spreading out, checking behind rocks and bushes with the methodical thoroughness of experienced hunters. It would only be a matter of minutes before they found the mine entrance, and from there it would be a short leap to discovering the hiding place behind the boulder. Cole made his decision. He stepped out from behind the boulder with his gun drawn, moving with the fluid grace that had earned him his reputation as the fearless cowboy. "That's far enough, Crowley." The effect was immediate. 6 guns swung toward him, but none of the men fired. Not yet. They had heard the stories about Cole Barrett, and even hardened killers thought twice before facing a legend. "Well, well," Crowley said, his voice carrying a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Cole Barrett. Heard you'd gone soft. Turned into a drifter." "Heard wrong," Cole replied, his gun trained on Crowley's chest. "Now you and your boys are going to turn around and ride away." "Can't do that, Barrett. We got business here." "Your business is with me now." Crowley's eyes narrowed as he studied Cole's position, looking for advantages. "You know, I heard you had a daughter. Heard she died in a fire a few nights back. Terrible tragedy. Is that what you heard?" "That's what I know." Saw the body myself. Crowley's smile was cold as winter wind. Course, if she wasn't dead, if she was hiding somewhere around here, well, that would change things considerably. The threat was clear, and Cole felt the familiar calm that came over him in moments of deadly danger. Time seemed to slow, and he could see every detail with crystal clarity. The nervous twitch in one rider's gun hand, the way another was positioning his horse for a quick escape, the calculation in Crowley's eyes as he weighed his options. Only thing that's going to change, Cole said quietly, is how many of you ride away from here. The standoff stretched like a taut wire, 6 men against 1, with a frightened girl hidden behind a boulder and the truth buried somewhere in the Kansas wind. Then Crowley made his choice. "Take him," he snarled, and the peaceful evening exploded into gunfire and chaos. The first shot came from Crowley's lieutenant, a scarred man named Dutch Keller, whose draw was fast but not fast enough. Cole's Colt barked once, and Keller toppled from his saddle before his own bullet went wide, chipping stone from the boulder where Ellie hid. Cole rolled left as the other 5 men opened fire, their shots kicking up dust and fragments of rock around his position. He came up behind a fallen log, his gun speaking twice more in rapid succession. 2 more riders fell, their horses rearing and bolting in panic. "Get behind him!" Crowley shouted, spurring his horse toward the mine entrance while his remaining men tried to flank Cole's position. "The girl's here somewhere!" But Cole was no longer the man who had fled Dodge City 8 years ago, haunted by guilt and self-doubt. 8 years of wandering had honed his skills to a razor's edge, and now he moved with the deadly precision of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. He vaulted over the log, advancing on the nearest rider with his gun blazing. The man's shot went high as Cole's bullet took him in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The 5th rider, seeing his companions fall like wheat before a scythe, wheeled his horse and fled toward the horizon, leaving only Crowley and Cole facing each other across 20 yards of blood-stained earth. "Impressive," Crowley said, his own gun trained on Cole. "But you're forgetting something, Barrett. I know where the girl is." Cole's blood turned to ice as he saw Crowley's eyes flick toward the boulder where Ellie was hidden. The man was positioning himself for a shot that would force Cole to choose between his own life and his daughter's. "You want to know why I killed the Martins?" Crowley continued, his voice conversational despite the carnage around them. "It wasn't about any deed. It was about you." "What are you talking about?" "Sheriff Dunn told me all about the famous Hawk Barrett. How you left town 8 years ago after that business with the Jameson gang. How you abandoned your daughter because you thought you were too dangerous to be around her." Crowley's smile was cruel. "He also told me that the one thing that might bring you back was if something happened to that little girl." The truth hit Cole like a physical blow. "You killed them to draw me out. Took longer than I expected. But here you are, just like Dunn said you'd be. The great fearless cowboy come home to save his little girl." Cole's mind raced, pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. "Dunn's been planning this for 8 years. Ever since you made him look like a fool in front of the whole town. Did you really think he'd forget? Did you think he'd forgive?" Crowley's finger tightened on his trigger. "He wants you dead, Barrett, and he wants your daughter to watch it happen." "Ah, Papa!" Ellie's scream shattered the moment as Sheriff Wade Dunn emerged from behind the mine entrance, his gun pressed to the back of her head. The girl's eyes were wide with terror, but she stood straight, refusing to cower, even in the face of death. "Hello, Cole," Dunn said, his voice carrying 8 years of accumulated hatred. "Miss me?" Cole kept his gun trained on Crowley, but his attention was split between 2 targets now. Dunn looked older, his face marked by the corruption that had eaten away at whatever decency he might once have possessed. His sheriff's badge caught the last rays of sunlight, a mockery of the justice it was supposed to represent. "Let her go, Wade. Your fight is with me." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Dunn replied. "My fight is with everything you represent. Your reputation, your legend, your precious moral code. I want to destroy all of it, starting with what you love most." "You destroyed my life once with your lies about the Jameson gang," Cole said. "Isn't that enough? Not even close. You see, Cole, I've spent 8 years building my power in this town. 8 years positioning myself to take everything you once had. And now, with you gone and your daughter dead, there'll be no one left to challenge me. Except I'm not gone, Cole said quietly. And she's not dead. Details, Crowley interjected, easily corrected. But as the three men faced each other in the growing darkness, none of them noticed the figure moving silently through the scrub brush behind Dunn's position. Ruby Malone had followed Cole from town, bringing with her a shotgun and the determination of a woman who had seen too much injustice go unpunished. The shotgun's blast echoed across the prairie like thunder, and Dunn staggered forward, his gun hand suddenly useless. Ellie broke free from his weakened grip, running toward Cole as Ruby stepped into view. "Thought you might need some help," she called out, working the shotgun's action to chamber another shell. Crowley spun toward this new threat, but Cole was already moving. His shot took Crowley in the shoulder, spinning the man around and sending his gun flying. The outlaw leader fell to his knees, clutching his wounded arm and cursing. Dunn, despite his injury, was reaching for his backup gun with his left hand. But Ellie, showing the same courage that ran in her father's blood, kicked the weapon away before the corrupt sheriff could grasp it. "It's over, Wade," Cole said, his gun now trained on the man who had destroyed so many lives with his greed and corruption. 8 years of lies, 8 years of innocent people paying for your crimes. It ends here. Dunn looked up at him with eyes full of hate and pain. "You think killing me will change anything? There are others. Men with more power than you can imagine. They'll hunt you down, Barrett. They'll hunt both of you down." "Maybe," Cole replied, "but they'll have to find us first." As if summoned by some cosmic sense of justice, the sound of approaching horses filled the air. But these weren't more of Crowley's men. These were federal marshals, their badges glinting in the moonlight as they surrounded the scene. "Marshal Tom Harrison," the lead rider announced, dismounting with the authority of a man accustomed to cleaning up other people's messes. "We've been tracking Jed Crowley for months. Looks like someone saved us the trouble of taking him alive." Ruby stepped forward, her shotgun lowered but ready. "Marshal, you'll want to hear what Sheriff Dunn has to say about his involvement with Crowley's gang." Harrison's eyes hardened as he looked at Dunn's badge. A corrupt lawman. That explains a lot about why Crowley was able to operate so freely in this area. Over the next hour, as the marshals secured the scene and tended to the wounded, the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. Dunn had been feeding information to Crowley for years, helping the outlaw leader identify targets and avoid capture. The attack on the Martin family had been part of a larger plan to draw Cole back to Dodge City, where Dunn could finally have his revenge. But the plan had one fatal flaw. It underestimated the bond between a father and daughter and the lengths to which a man would go to protect the people he loved. As dawn broke over the Kansas plains, Cole sat on a boulder with Ellie beside him, watching the marshals prepare to transport their prisoners back to Dodge City for trial. The girl leaned against his shoulder, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline that had sustained her through the night. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Cole considered the question carefully. For 8 years, he had been running from responsibility, from connection, from the possibility of causing pain to the people he cared about. But the events of the past few days had taught him something important. Running away didn't protect anyone. It only left them vulnerable to the predators who thrived in the shadows. "Now we go home," he said finally. "Where's home?" Cole looked down at his daughter, this brave, resilient girl who had survived horrors that would have broken many adults. "Wherever we are together." Ruby approached them as the sun climbed higher, her face tired but satisfied. "The marshals want to know if you'll testify at the trial." "We'll be there," Cole said. "Both of us." "And after that?" Cole smiled, the first genuine smile he had worn in years. "After that, I think it's time I learned how to be a father." Ellie looked up at him with those storm-gray eyes that mirrored his own. "You already are one. You came back for me. I should never have left in the first place." "Maybe," Ellie said with wisdom beyond her years. "But you're here now. That's what matters." As they prepared to leave the site of so much violence and revelation, Cole felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 long years. Peace. The ghosts that had driven him into exile were finally laid to rest, replaced by something far more powerful, the love of a daughter who had never stopped believing that her father would come home. The fearless cowboy was dead, buried in the Kansas dust, along with the lies and guilt that had created him. In his place stood Cole Barrett, a man ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that he would never again face them alone. Behind them, the abandoned mine shaft stood empty, its secrets finally revealed. Ahead lay Dodge City, where a corrupt sheriff would face justice and a community would begin to heal from years of hidden corruption. And somewhere in between, a father and daughter rode toward their future together, their bond forged stronger by the trials they had endured and the truth they had finally uncovered. The hunt was over. The healing could begin. Hello, how are you? Did you enjoy the story? Like, share, comment on which city you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel to help us continue adding new amazing videos. Thank you very much, and come back often.